Today I messed update, I got mucked, and suffered every second of it. I've had a couple days to reflect and recover now and wanted to put this out there. Crime really doesn't pay. Before the punishment, the worst part was telling my parents. I'm 20 and still live with them, and given what I'd heard about people stinking to high hell after the punishment, I figured I had no choice but to tell them. They were surprisingly calm about it, basically saying, well, I guess we couldn't teach you properly not to steal, so we'll see if the cows can. Don't expect much sympathy from us. I'd rather them have yelled though, honestly. I'd like to say I was able to make use of some of your suggestions, something nice smelling under the nose, a shower cap, etc., but this was not the case. First, the agreement to be mucked I signed forbid any effort to mitigate the punishment's effects. It gave examples like menthol under the nose, or even getting a very short haircut right beforehand. Secondly, I had to report to the jail the night beforehand, so they could make sure everyone's set to be mucked the next day was accounted for. My mom was kind enough to drive me there. So I spent the night in a small jail cell alone, knowing I'd be driven out to the farm the next morning. It was good perspective on what could await me if I get caught again. I don't think I could spend months on end in a small box like that. As horrible as mucking was, I think I made the right choice to avoid jail. The morning of the mucking warning came, and they took me out in handcuffs and loaded me into the back seat of a police car. There were 6 of us to be mucked that day, it appeared. 2 cars, 3 people in the back of each. They reminded us not to talk to one another or to the officers. It was a silent, 30-minute drive way out into the countryside. Very nerve-wracking. Then I saw the farm in the distance, and it was way bigger than I thought. I guess I envisioned a little roadside barn with 20 to 30 cows in it, but this dairy was massive. We pulled up around the back of one of these giant cow sheds and they unloaded us. Apparently 4 of us had a 6-hour sentence, including me, while 2 people had a 4-hour sentence. The officers led the 4 of us into the back entrance of the cowshed, and took the other 2 off to wait in some room off to the side for a couple hours. The stench hit me when we entered the barn. It was nice to be out from the cold and into the heated shed, but God, those cows reek. It was noisy, too, constant mooing from what sounded like hundreds of animals. They took us to a somewhat secluded area in the back of the barn. We had to remove our shirts, socks, and shoes, but could keep our pants on. They also gave us goggles to wear. Then they re-handcuffed us, and made us sit down with our backs to the wall one by one, about 5 meters apart, very spaced out. When they got to me, they clipped my handcuffs into a thing on the wall behind my back, cuffed my legs together at the ankles and locked it into a spot on the floor, and also put some sort of restraint around my midsection. I really couldn't move, beyond being able to slightly swivel my head. The mucking. Finally, they left with us locked in place, and returned in a couple minutes with shovels and a couple large wheelbarrows. One officer started mucking the man on my left, and the other started on me. It was pretty unceremonious. He took a huge shovelful of the manure and dumped it right on my legs and lap. The next shovelful over my chest. Another on my lower half, another on my upper half. I was retching. I'd never smelled anything like this before. And it was all greenish-brown, and I couldn't even tell if it was a solid or a liquid. It was also very hot, and thick and runny. The next couple shovelfuls went over my head and into my face. I couldn't see because they splattered the goggles. When they finished doing that to all 4 of us, which didn't take long, it sounded like they left the barn, and I was left to sit there in misery. And it was complete misery. Whatever I expected, this was way, way worse. First of all, no one warned me that this stuff doesn't smell anything like dog poop, or even a stronger version of dog poop. To me it sort of smelled like awful rancid farts. And it felt like there was practically steam coming off of it. It didn't make it painful to breathe or feel suffocating like ammonia, but it made breathing incredibly nauseating and unpleasant. Every breath felt like inhaling these hot, wet farts, and the air felt so thick with it I could taste it, too. It made me very conscious of my breathing pattern, which makes time slow down so much. Then there was the actual physical presence of the stuff on me. It's hot, it's wet, it's slimy and dripping and running everywhere. The load dumped on top my head was constantly dripping and running down into my face, and the stuff on my face was dripping and running down my body, and I couldn't move, so I couldn't do anything to stop it. It's itchy, and irritating, and just a horribly disgusting feeling. And then there's the environment around me. I can't see well, if at all, from the manure-splattered goggles, and all you hear is the constant mooing of cows, and the gagging/retching/groaning from the other offenders around you. Can't see, can't move, can't talk, nothing to do but inhale the stench and think about what I've done, which I guess was the point. I couldn't hold back the vomit for long myself. Then after some time, it starts to dry on you a little bit, and form kind of a crust. This was no less gross, especially as I heard/felt flies and insects start to swarm around me, with no way to swat them away. After what felt like forever, I heard the officers return with the other 2 offenders with the 4-hour sentences, and I guess the sight of us must have been horrible to behold, because one of them, I'm guessing it was the woman in her 30s with the tattoos in the car, next to me, was saying, "Oh my God, no way, I'm sorry, please don't do that to me," etc. Obviously didn't do her any good. I was just shocked it had only been 2 hours. I didn't think I could make it another 4. After those 2 were mucked, I was surprised to have an officer suddenly dry off my goggles with a wash rag so I could see, and ask me if I wanted a drink. Guess they didn't want us to dehydrate from puking. So I let him put a water bottle to my lips and took a couple sips, which felt good. Unfortunately, they then gave me another couple shovelfuls from the wheelbarrow, starting the whole oozing and drying process over again. This happened once more later on, offering a drink to all 6 of us followed by another couple shovelfuls, at what I can only assume was the 4-hour mark. Finally at the end, they hosed us all down with cold water for a good 2 minutes each, which was miserable in itself, loaded us back into the cars, and took us back into the city. My mother was, reluctantly, there to pick me up. Aftermath. Needless to say I was exhausted afterwards. My mom had to roll the windows down and looked disgusted the whole ride home, but she said she was glad I was safe. I spent the next couple days just laying in bed and showering repeatedly. I've tried almost every suggestion you all gave me in the last post, and a lot more, but nothing seems to fully get the smell out. I thought I'd be used to it by now, but even I can still smell it sometimes. Thankfully I think it's getting a little bit better. It certainly wasn't worth it, and if getting caught again means substantial jail time and/or an even longer mucking, I wouldn't risk it even if it's only a 1% chance. I promised myself and my parents I wouldn't steal again. I hope I can keep that promise, and I guess thinking of that awful smell and feel of manure if I ever start feeling impulsive will hopefully be enough to keep me straight. Too long. Didn't read. Got mucked as a punishment for shoplifting. It was disgusting and miserable, still trying to recover, learned a tough lesson.